So, we actually like to support the local community, and one of the things that I especially like to support is things that Roger had been associated with, like the Daily Illini, and they print this beautiful booklet. I think this year it is even exceptional. And so I know when I go to film festivals, I take a pamphlet, sometimes a booklet, sometimes I keep it, sometimes I don't. If it's something that's either a work of art or I think that it's been well written, I'll keep it. But sometimes even I can be kind of mindless about it, and I take it for granted, and I use it, I thumb through it a little bit while I'm there, and then I throw it away. Some of you told me that you've been saving these, and it's really great. Oh, you don't have to clap for saving them, but except that when you really look back and you get a rich history of the festival. And Shatterglass and Nate Cohen and I are really hoping to put together maybe a full documentary about the festival one day. And so things like this will be a good resource. Things that we are shooting will be a resource. Maybe interviews with some of you will be a good resource. So I just want to tell you about this because it's really beautiful. We also have the News Gazette, the local newspaper, and Roger worked for the News Gazette when he was 15 years old. He was actually a full reporter on the paper. I don't know about child labor laws, but he was a sports reporter, and that's one of the reasons he loved the movie Almost Famous so much, because Cameron Crowe went on, Rolling Stone sent him on tour when he was 15 years old following this band around, and Roger really related to that. So the News Gazette, I don't know where the writer is. I have to be careful about the words that I use because somebody told me on the front page of the paper today, I said, I'm giddy, I have the jitters, I'm fainting, and I guess I did say all of those things. But I don't think about them as I'm saying them. I'm just kind of an in-the-moment type of person. And you know, those of you who've been coming here for years, sometimes things come out of my mouth that I regret later, so that's why I'm empathetic about people sometimes on TV who say something either stupid or thoughtless or, you know, that sounds kind of far out or esoteric, because when you're on here, you're just not thinking about that. And I think of you as my family, so if I fall, you're going to be there to catch me. You're my safety net. But thank you, News Gazette, for continuing to cover Ebertfest. And people, please buy, because I don't want to see newspapers go out of business. This is just like the serious part of me. I try to keep politics out of this as much as possible. But seriously, if we don't support journalists, if we don't support newspapers, if we don't support investigative journalists and broadcast on TV, we are going to be a total dictatorship. So, and that actually takes me into the next movie, because it's not that it's about journalism, but it's about life, and it's about real life. And we're going to have a good friend of the festival introduce it. I'm just going to read a little bit about him. Even though he comes every year and you know him, I don't know if you know just how deeply involved in cinema he really is. And the fact that somebody who is the co-president of a studio comes to Ebertfest every year, you know, News Gazette, it blows my mind. Michael Barker is the co-president of Sony Pictures Classics, and he's helped distribute some outstanding independent films. To say the least, over the span of Michael's career, his films have received over 170 Academy Award nominations. This year, he was nominated for films such as, with Glenn Close, The Wife, Never Look Back. And you know, I pronounce it Capernaum, but I think I can't even say it the way he says it. It's Capernaum is the way I pronounce it, by Nadine Labaki, and it's a wonderful, wonderful film. He has he serves as the co-chairman on the Museum of the Moving Image Board of Directors. And, you know, just the thing about Michael, you know, I may have mentioned this before, but the thing that Roger related to Michael about is they both had this curiosity about the world. They had a curiosity about people. When we would run into Michael at film festivals, or when Roger was sick and he actually came to the house several times to visit, sometimes they talked about movies, but other times they talked about books and about current affairs. He has this mind. He's a very bright man. I'm speaking of both men, Michael and, of course, Roger. You know, he was brilliant. On the panel this morning, we talked about the fact that the panel was women in cinema, and whether it makes a difference whether you're independent or Hollywood studio film. Women in Film gave Michael Barker and his co-president, Tom Bernard, an award because they had worked with more women directors than all the other studios put together. And Michael and Tom said that when they were getting the award and somebody did this research and they put this number together, they had worked with like 60 women directors. He said it was never a thing like, I'm going to hire her or do a movie with her because she's a woman. They just looked for quality, and they looked for people that they wanted to work with and the artistry. And as it turned out, over the years, both foreign and domestic, they worked with more directors. So here to introduce, a film that I get so emotional about because Roger and I just loved it. Michael Barker introducing Rachel Getting Married.
Thank you. I've been coming here 17 years. And the last 24 hours, I knew what I was going to say here, but then I threw it all out the window, and Nate said, talk all you want, say whatever you want. But in the last 24 hours, I've observed why I've been coming here 17 years. Also, why I have always adored Roger and Chaz. And last night, did you see Chaz showed this little short where they have the empathy truck? You know, I knew Roger before he met Chaz. I don't know about that empathy truck at that time. And I think we have to talk about them as a couple. And I think she humanized him in such a way where this festival is all about extended family. He got that from her. I think when I look at that marriage, I say to myself, she had what he didn't have, he had what she didn't have, and it's one of those matches made in heaven, like Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee, or on film, like William Powell and Myrna Loy. I really believe that, and I think no one's ever said that up here, but I think we are really celebrating an incredible couple. Now, one of the reasons I am here, I come every year also, is Chaz is right. I met Roger when I was 15. I skipped school in the south side of Dallas, and I went to the USA Film Festival. It was 1969, and he was there, or 1970. He was there on some panel, and I thought he was so cool, okay? And he was even a great writer then. He had just about to win the Pulitzer Prize, or maybe he had already won it by then. And then when I moved to New York, I started my career, and it was many years before I ever saw him again. And it was like the late 70s, and he never paid attention to me. He never paid attention to me until Chaz. And when I met Chaz, she would tug on his coat and say, and the relationship with Roger was so interesting to me because it took me decades to realize what Chaz just said. When I would see Roger, it wouldn't be, I realized he was one of my best friends, but we never talked about personal issues or personal problems. We talked about books. We talked about movies. We talked a little bit about politics. But the thing that Roger had, that I have, and all of the people that come here as guests over and over again, and you have, is this idea that when we engage in motion pictures, not only we engage in motion pictures to give us more clarity about the world, to understand the world better, but we engage in motion pictures because they have helped guide us morally and in our actions, and they explain the complexity of the world. And for Roger, and it took me many years to realize that was really the important thing for him. And he would, and also family, that also came from Chaz, you know. The second year I was here, my daughter went to University of Chicago, and they invited my daughter and son-in-law to come join us, and they came several years. She's become a director. It's just an emotional event for me to present this film on a number of levels. One is that Jonathan Demme produced her first film called Song One with Anne Hathaway and Mary Steenburgen, but it was all about the family. Even today when we had lunch, talking about everybody's families and their kids, it's like, I know all about Sonia. She knows all about my girls. This is key to what this festival is all about, extended family. And when we talk about films and extended family, and this is what I loved about Roger, he was very careful about who he let into that family. He let into that family artists of films that he respected and that he loved, or Chaz respected and Chaz loved. He let into that family people that he wanted to be friends with because they had in common with him what he felt about the power of the engagement in movies. And I remember, you know, people tell me I'm a great speaker, but the fact of the matter is, when I first started coming here, Roger said, I want you to go up there and speak. I was like, what are you, out of your mind? And he said, no, I got a feeling about you. So he had me introduce La Dolce Vita, which I thought was like the craziest thing I'd ever heard. And then I did it, but I think those of us who were friends of his and continue to be friends of his and Chaz's, they empower people like me to do things we didn't know we could do. And that was the virtue of Roger Ebert. It's amazing. Now, something else that hit me yesterday, and again, when we're young and people pass away, we kind of avoid grief. I turned 65 this year, as we get older, what we realize is the people that we're closest to that pass away, or who we feel very close to that pass away, the grief never disappears. The grief has no deadline. And what I can't get over here is that Roger Ebert passed away, and we still have the grief of being diminished by him not being here. Scott Wilson passed away, and we were together many times when he was here, had great times. We are somewhat diminished by his passing away. Jonathan Demme, and I started thinking about when I brought Bennett Miller here with Capote. It was a few months after Philip Seymour Hoffman passed away. And it was a way for us to deal with grief. But what is amazing about this festival is we're dealing with grief as a celebration for these people that have passed away. And I think there's no other event like it. And I think it has to do with humanity and art. And I will come here as long as you invite me. There's just no question. Now, I do want to get to the specificity of Scott Wilson for a moment, because one of the things that's also amazing about Ebertfest is Ebertfest has a history of honoring people who are highly skilled artists who we take for granted because they're not, Clark Gable. They're not in the limelight so much. Scott Wilson was one of those people. He was a great artist. And he was one of those artists that made me come to the conclusion that when people ask you, or you want to figure out what great acting is, what is great acting on the screen? Well, for me, great acting on the screen is when you see a moment and you go, holy cow, did you see that? But the moment, you can't explain how that actor did that. Scott Wilson had more moments like that than you can imagine. You go back and see In the Heat of the Night. There's a scene between him and Sidney Poitier in the basement of a jail. Just watch that scene and watch him, and it is an intuitive thing. And yes, he's got acting technique, but it's great acting. Watch New Centurions again with Stacy Keach and George C. Scott. Watch some of these movies. And this movie, we had a movie called Junebug that he was in, and the movie the festival is celebrating him with here was by far his favorite movie. And I remember when I saw it in '84, I liked it very much, but I didn't see in it what he saw in it until I saw it again. And it's all about pure honesty and pure truth in the movies. And so we celebrate him. And he was a lot of fun, and he was a great artist. And it's great that there is an institution like this that points this out. And then we come to Jonathan Demme. Jonathan Demme, personally, was one of my close friends. Professionally, he was very, very important to me. This film is what Ebertfest is all about. If you read the entry that Chaz wrote about this film in the magazine, and she's kind of overwhelmed by it, it is really what this festival is about, this whole idea of extended family. And Jonathan's history, he first worked with Roger Corman, doing these cheap horror films and these intense melodramas. Caged Heat was a big hit. He then went on to make films. He made a film at United Artists called Last Embrace. Now, United Artists, the mentors at United Artists who formed Orion Classics were also my partner Tom Bernard's and my mentor. And these guys really felt that Jonathan Demme was the next great director. And they had started UA, where they pushed Billy Wilder and Stanley Kubrick and all of these great directors at the beginning of their careers. and they were older, and when they formed Orion Pictures, they decided he was the great director to hang your hat on as an American director. A lot of people disagreed with them. Last Embrace was a disaster at UA. The first film he made at Orion was a movie called Something Wild. And that was a movie that it was very quirky, and people really who loved that movie, it became a cult movie, but it was by no means a movie that made money. And then the next movie he made there was Married to the Mob. And that was more commercial, and that movie started to make a little money. And then the next movie he made was Silence of the Lambs. And what you understand of the philosophy of these gentlemen who formed UA and Orion Pictures was that you trust in a filmmaker, because if they're that good, your creative decision is putting your hope in someone that you have a good eye that will eventually come through. Now, Silence of the Lambs is a perfect film. It's a perfect film. Jodie Foster, as for women's rights, incredible. As a thriller, as edited, every aspect of that film is perfect. But when Jonathan finished that film, he never made a comedy again, I don't think. That wasn't really a comedy, but the bottom line is, no, but when he was younger, he made comedies like Handle with Care, he made all these comedies. He became the Hollywood thing he had done, and he wasn't into it as much as he was into it before. He was into major issues. He was into civil rights issues. He was into Indians' rights issues. And he knew everything about music. He knew everything about film. He was just amazing. The next film he made was Philadelphia, which was a big success with Tom Hanks. And then he made Beloved, because he felt very close to Toni Morrison's novel. And but he changed his view of the business. He did not like the business. He just liked making the films he wanted to make. He wanted to work with the people that he wanted to surround him as friends and do really good work. And he wanted to try things that no one else had tried. And he was a bit like Roger in that way of wanting to surround himself with a certain type of people that were into the meaning of life the way he was. And so, you know, a lot of people, he used to say, everyone says I'm such a nice guy. I'm really not such a nice guy. And he was not such a nice guy to people that were not in that circle. He did not like agents. He did not like people of the business in Hollywood. He lived in New York. One day, and my history with him is such an eye-opener, life-changing. We did a documentary with him. He was really into documentaries and doing documentaries in a way no one had ever done before. Fluid camera, editing in kind of new and unique ways. He was not as interested in commercial prospects as getting these ideas across in a filmic sort of way. So we had the film. He made a documentary called Jimmy Carter, Man from Plains. I think we had the lowest gross of any movie in any theater that played that movie at that time. And I remember when we opened, it didn't even get great reviews. It was just really, really bad. What always happens when a movie's a disaster, usually what happens is you dread talking to the filmmaker the next day, and then you assume you're going to get blamed. The distributor's always going to get blamed. It's the way out, and I accept it, and it's fine. But Jonathan Demme, I called him on Saturday, and I got him in his car, and I was like, here it comes. You didn't do this, and you didn't do that, you didn't do this. He goes, Michael, I feel so terrible. I said, what do you mean? He said, the work you all did was unbelievable. It was this, that, and the other. I will make it up to you. I will find something. We have to work again. Bells and whistles for me. The way to go into disaster is to really bond with the filmmaker of getting through it and make another film after. And so about a year later, maybe not even that, he sent a script to us called Dancing with Shiva. And it was written by Jenny Lumet. And it was a stunning screenplay. When you watch this movie, you're going to think a lot of it is improvised. Some of it is, but basically it is that screenplay. And it is brilliantly written. We will ask Jenny when she comes later how much of it is true about her life. We'll leave that to her to tell us. Jenny Lumet comes from a grand family. Her grandmother on her mother's side was Lena Horne. Her father was Sidney Lumet. Now, Sidney Lumet, we know Lena Horne. Sidney Lumet directed Dog Day Afternoon, 12 Angry Men, one of those seminal debuts in film history. And anyone that you meet in Jenny Lumet's family, they are wonderful. They are part of the Chaz Ebert, Roger Ebert extended family experience. And so we read it, and we said, Jonathan, we would love to do it, but the budget is twice whatever we'd invested in to make it, so we should find partners. He said, no, Michael, I'm going to do this with you, and you're going to do the whole thing. I said, but Jonathan, it costs twice as much. He said, you don't understand. Because I just don't like the way the business runs anymore. I want to be with the people I like. If you don't do this movie, I am not going to do it. If Anne Hathaway doesn't do this movie, I am not going to do it. And I thought, wow. Well, the head of Sony Corporation, a guy named Howard Stringer, he had something like 165,000 people that work for him above Sony Pictures Entertainment. Tom and I remembered many months before, he said, if you ever feel like taking a risk on something that you're a little nervous about or you're cautious about how it's going to affect your bottom line, I have some R&D money over here that can help you. So we called him, and he did it. And we did the movie, the whole movie. It's actually the only movie we've ever really cash flowed from start to finish. And even after the film's success, when we had the world premiere, Jonathan went out of his way to invite Howard Stringer to the premiere in Venice, Howard Stringer to any award the picture won, and Howard Stringer went to every one of those events because he felt appreciated by Jonathan Demme. So the film, what Jonathan did was surround himself with people he'd worked with, people he loved, family. Not just Tom and myself, but also the producers. There was Ilona Hertzberg, who made a few films with him. Neda Armian also produced it, who made several movies with him, produced for him. And then there was Mark Platt, who also produced it. Now, Mark Platt was the production executive at Orion when he made Silence of the Lambs. So it was a continuation of his life. But he also wanted this movie to be different from all other narrative films. He had been playing around with documentary. He'd always done those kind of Hollywood narratives with the beginning, middle, and an end. And he said, there's got to be a way I can make a movie where the audience feels they're at the real wedding. And the audience feels they're watching this, only actors are playing the lead roles. But it's even though it is a fictional screenplay, but the audience feels it's not fictional at all, that it's real. And the way he did that was he cast the film with people he thought would be perfect for the roles. There was Anne Hathaway, of course. There was Rosemary DeWitt, who plays Rachel. Bill Irwin, Anna Devere-Smith, who was in a lot of Jonathan's movies. Deborah Winger, she's in the movie 8 minutes. Oh my God, she's just incredible. This movie is about gesture. It's about moments. And you just believe these people are the authentic people. But then came the wedding scene. And when you see the wedding scene, it has every different kind of music imaginable in the wedding scene. And there are so many people. I won't say it's as big as this crowd. There's so many people. What I want you to know is Jonathan Demme would not allow anyone to hire any extras, and everyone in the wedding scene are friends of his that he knew. And everyone is a personal acquaintance or a friend or a family member because he wanted it to be like a real wedding. And when the film was released, it was actually a big success. And some critics loved the film. I remember Richard Schickel from Time magazine hated the film. Said it was a mess. It should have a beginning, middle, and an end. What happened to the guy who made Silence of the Lambs? He didn't understand what Jonathan was doing here. And Chaz's response to the film is what most people's response to the film is. We all have complicated families, and we're living this movie like we live our own, and it's moving, and it's amazing. We see it on screen, and it's just so moving. And it's even more moving. He passed away a year and a half ago. It's one of the major losses in the lives of the people who he trusted, and the people who are his close friends, and there's so many. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the movie, and afterwards, Jenny Lumet's going to be on audio. Also, Steve Apcon is going to join us. Steve Apcon is one of Jonathan's very close friends. He has always been a visionary about the media world, about technology. He's a great documentary filmmaker. And Jonathan and I agreed when we met him that this guy represents the present and the future the way we want it to be. And he's a very impressive guy, both personally and professionally. So we'll all be together afterwards, and I'm sorry I talked too long. Bye.